One of the things that I used to do before Facebook so thoroughly deplatformed me that they had hunted down all the emails that I had ever used, including like high school and middle school when the internet was just barely available, was to list out reasons why people had accepted Islam. And I posted hundreds of them in talking about why we embraced Islam. Book 4 by Arafat El-Ashi. We're going to list out 21 or so. Despite the Civil Rights Act, even before September 11th and the enhancing it under the next president, people faced persecution from official entities because of their religion. Islam is beyond such treatments. It's beyond the prejudices of gender and ancestry. It's something for people to help each other through. Some people accept Islam to break through dogma and to have an experience of religion for themselves. Some people see Islam as internationally inflectionally, and some people see it as making things that would be a specific effort more part of the lifestyle. Some see it as more of a confirmation of history and philosophy. Some see it as confirming authentic rights rather than those paths that build up claims to take things from people. People accept Islam because they see it as having a direction for humanity and not a direction that's exploitative. Some people see it as the faith that goes beyond politics, the faith that goes through climate change without being changed itself. Some see it as informing about themselves, and others see it as something in which it gave opportunity to long-standing culture to perfect itself. Some see it as most modern, as going beyond the sects, as being a really loving faith, not just some words that include love. Some look at Islam as the faith that keeps away the injustice of judges that change the penalties. People look at Islam as a faith that doesn't separate out parts. Your role in government and everything else is something that religion has guidance for. And, we go beyond being just human. Some accept Islam because they realize things are not just about the ways of their ancestors, and that what happened when they were a child was not their fault. Some see the chain of prophets and reasons to accept faith when previously they were just told, we've told you what to accept, or something equivalent to that. Some will look at the pilgrimage, and others will look at the seemingly ordinary ways of life of the believers, and then accept Islam. Others want to learn about something exotic and then find out that it's really more something for the individual to individuate. And they get so impressed by the Quran that they realize that it's not something that humans could compose, and therefore accept it as being something other than just some mere individual or communal set of philosophy. Some turn to Islam because of groups that try to bring about revival. Not just conversion, but to encourage people to become more active in their faith and going around like that. I myself have taken part in such efforts. And some will distinguish between Islamic life and the societies that surround them. So many things are wrong with the popular Islam and political Islam narratives, because when you look at it, even then you find within such and such country compared with other countries that are of a different quality, you don't actually come to it then. But certainly religion is not the same thing as what just happens in some country. And a lot of those countries, they treat those things a lot harsher than they do in the West. It's a lot less tolerated. So, it can't be political Islam then. There is ethnic expressions, but that's for something else in discussion, right? Some become curious when they witness the prayer. Some, they look at your, they have patriotic impulses, and they find a faith that helps them understand the actual freedom fighting aspects of such efforts. A lot of people find out that Islam doesn't mistreat the women. None of that has to do with that. There's a lot of corporate taking. It's like if the average Afghani, and we're including the infants as well, earns $79,000 something a year, and the average working man takes home less than $1,000, is that the fault of the religion that any of the economic hardship they're going through? No, it's foreign corporations. Same thing with most of these African countries, is that they're earning more per capita than Americans are. Yet people are acting like, oh, it's their backwards culture and religion. It's like they're held back by these groups. And when we hear a news story, that doesn't mean it's, the main thing. Even in living in the country that does most of the rape and most of the child molestation, it's not something we're all for in this country, And the penalties, as far as what the law does, may not be as severe as other countries, but we still, you don't blame it as, it's just part of American culture. And it's like, no. So even if it was true, it's not things to point out. And spousal abuse, and the countries that they say spousal abuse, it's like, nope, then again, things are not under Islamic rule in the Muslim majority countries, and you do find deviations with some of the stuff. Now, the deviations you tend to find, which are less common than like in Europe or something, they are the excuses for the rich, just like in America, the networks of excusing the rich or enabling the rich that want to do this stuff. I'm not blaming all the rich. I'm just saying, some of them have access to stuff that others wouldn't be able to get away with. So more and more women are turning to Islam because of the dignity that it affirms for them. And when it talks about modesty, it's not insulting and it's not threatening with violence. Now, men may be kept out of prayer services if they're not covered properly, graven images, immodest, etc., etc. So the idea that it's just the women and of that or anything else is just a nonsense claim. But people believe it. And certainly we can look at the teachings of Islam to distinguish between even what actually turns out to be a behavior of a Muslim. Islam allows us to ask questions. Now, it tells us to be careful of these questions as to not make things too strict on us or other people, or these nonsense, disrespectful questions, but authentic questions about people's belief or what the religion actually teaches on something, that's... People accept Islam because it affirms nature, rather than saying that nature is something to take off, or that we're damned from birth until we accept some system that has taken care of things because we're not worthy to make the efforts ourselves. Some people look at the humility that is shown in the practices. And it isn't a debasing sort of humility, as people say. Oh, I'm not worthy, and I'm a this, that, and the other. And, Islam doesn't go that approach. We are trying to perfect ourselves. Of course, a person accepting Islam would be the sort of individual who would not be giving up the good and truth that they had in the previous faith or philosophy. Some people look at how Islam is open. There's no access controlling priests in Islam. So the teachings are, whoever has the teachings. We're not looking for others to operate powers for us or to divine secrets. People will look at the fact that fasting and other practices are not about debasing the body. When there is a war, it's not about dying. Certainly, you're willing to die to defend yourselves and others, but it's not about doing away with this vehicle of operations. People accept Islam because they look at all the bad things that are being said and they find out that they're not true. They accept Islam because it seems the ultimate direction away from mere materialism, but in a way that does not deny the material nature. People will accept Islam for what they can do for their life here, rather than just projecting it in an afterlife. But of course, I've talked to people that were like, oh, the talk of hell is so graphic. Or whenever it mentions hell, it tells you, well, here's the alternative. And oh, there's a way out. You always see that grouped together, don't you? Some people want a scripture where every verse is understood rather than being, it's just there with something we're to believe in. And people look at the differences between, some of the Bible teachings, where things seem to be plain words, but combined they're kind of not. And some of the differences in the ethics and stuff, people look at that and they choose Islam. Some will accept Islam because of the courtesy that's shown, contrary to some ways. Because people aren't used to such things as no graven images and full physical modesty and some other things. A lot of the masajid will have garments so that visitors can properly cover up. And some people are like, okay, instead of being turned away, like, this is a place that's kind of like a temple, and you have to be fully modest, and there's some rules that everybody has got to follow, and, but instead of running the people out, there's people who, do this. So some people accept Islam because of that. And I've noticed that's more common than, oh, you're not Muslim, we don't expect you, so just come on in short shorts or big old lion on your clothes or something like that. I've seen it a lot more common the other way around, that you treat it like the sanctum of a temple. And, you help the people to follow the rules. People will see Islam as practical. They'll see it as a form of mysticism which involves the community, and accept on grounds like that. Some people are going to accept Islam because they see it as something more than just something to act out or speak about. Some will see how thoroughly Islam encourages philosophy and science. Now, a lot of people say, oh, no, not philosophy. It's like, the problem with philosophy, as people call it, is they quote philosophers instead of actually doing the philosophy. You can do Nietzschean philosophy and lead yourself to Islam. You can look at Schopenhauer and lead yourself to Islam. You can look at Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. You can look at the Stoics. You can look at the hedonists. There's all sorts of ways to look at it, and a lot of people don't know what a hedonist is. Epicureanism is a type of hedonism. And as indicated previously, somebody looking like the experience of this life can be the reason why people accept Islam. But, we're not quoting all these other philosophers. Well, you can quote technically, but you know what I mean. It's, philosophy is methodology, and that methodology can lead you towards faith, or it can be a tool to express faith. So, Islam encouraging the use of our minds. Some people notice differences between names and teachings in what was their faith. Some want to go beyond the fear of the human and want to actually have something that they can understand beyond, well, it's this phrase we repeat, but what does that mean? I don't know, I can't rephrase it. Well, that's not how people say it, but, People accept Islam because they want one faith, and maybe a faith that explains these other faiths. You know what I mean? Like, how they came about, what was the path instead at basically all times of human history, and of course, beyond history, prehistory, whatever you're going to call that. People realize that there's more than titles, that there's more than ancestral ways, that there's more than the type of fantasy life that you get in fiction of different sorts. People want to see a faith that calls people of all levels of the economy and other types of status to treat each other right. Brief prayer services in the evening, dusk, dawn, early afternoon, and late afternoon. Give humanity opportunities that once a week, and, well, find out what they're doing locally as far as anything else, services may not have reached people with. So they look at that opportunity for attendance and a lack of gatekeeping, as it's called, for that access to the place of worship. Islam has united the ancestries, and regardless of the conflicts, those who are capable of attendance are able to attend. And of course, to become a Muslim, one is witness saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. There's nothing worthy of worship except the singular and definitive God, and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger, prophet.